Friends, hi family. A couple weeks ago now, somebody asked me to do a video on carbon monoxide poisoning, the dangers of the improper use of generators. Yes, I'm going to do that today. But before I do that, I just want to share a little word about kindness, because this world can be so unkind and people have gotten used to making excuses and say that they're speaking their mind and speaking their truth or living in their truth, when the truth is people just want to be unkind. I just want to share some benefits. Kindness provides significant benefits, not just to the giver of the kindness, but the receiver also. And these benefits include increased physical health, enhanced mental well-being, and stronger social connections. Something that you should know is that kindness helps to lower stress hormones, reduce blood pressure, and boosts immune function, while also increasing happiness, self-esteem, and reducing symptoms of depression. You know that we've been talking about health and dangers that lurk after Hurricane Melissa, dangers of infectious diseases. But there is a disease called mindset, the mindset of unkindness. And this disease can be solved simply by a little dose of kindness. So friends, remember now, we want to reduce our blood pressure, we want to reduce stress hormones, we want to increase happiness, and we want to reduce depression. So take some time today to be kind, and let's use kindness to create a positive environment as we take care of each other. I wanted to share the gift of kindness today by talking a little about how we can properly use generators, how generators, if improperly used, improperly placed, can create challenges with our health. So I know we've been talking about infectious diseases, but this one is about acute illnesses that can happen from the improper use of the generator. Generators can pose a severe risk, people. The biggest risk is carbon monoxide poisoning, which can be fatal within minutes. Carbon monoxide is a gas that you can't see because it's colorless, you can't smell it because it's odorless, and you can't taste it because it's tasteless. It's often called the invisible killer, so people may not realize that they're being poisoned until it's too late. And right now, after Hurricane Melissa and the downed power lines and so on, it's taken a while for electricity to return to certain areas, and people have now gained an affinity for generators, and so there's lots of usage of generators in communities, and the risk of carbon monoxide poisoning increases, especially if these generators are not used properly. So stay with me as I walk you through some of the dangers of carbon monoxide poisoning, through the symptoms of carbon monoxide poisoning, and share a little bit about how it's produced and some effects. If somebody doesn't die from carbon monoxide poisoning, they can end up with long-term effects and a changed life. So let's be careful, friends. Combustion means burning. Combustion of gasoline, natural gas, and other petroleum gases in generators produce carbon monoxide. So carbon monoxide is different from carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is the gas that we produce when we use oxygen for our chemical reactions, and the end product, which we exhale, plants intake the carbon dioxide, and the cycle of life continues. Generators produce carbon monoxide because it's an unavoidable byproduct of the incomplete combustion of their fuel. This colorless, odorless gas is highly poisonous and can be lethal. To prevent carbon monoxide poisoning, always operate a generator outdoors, at least 20 feet away from the house, with the exhaust directed away from any doors, windows, or vents. How does carbon monoxide affect your body? Remember, for our chemical reactions to work, we need oxygen, and oxygen binds to our red blood cells through the hemoglobin that's in our red blood cells. Now, carbon monoxide has a greater affinity for red blood cells than oxygen, so it bounces oxygen out of the way, so to speak, and it binds to the hemoglobin in our red blood cells 200 times more readily than oxygen. So carbon monoxide is the matey you don't want to have, because it's come to take over and it's deadly. Oxygen is the gas that we need to sustain life. Why do you get oxygen deprivation when you are exposed to carbon monoxide? Because carbon monoxide displaces the oxygen, it takes over, and without the oxygen, that's where you start to get in trouble. Exposure severity depends on how much there is and how long the exposure lasts. Higher concentrations can create severe symptoms very quickly, while lower concentrations can create gradual poisoning that becomes harder to detect over time. You can have acute exposure where you have rapid symptoms, or you can have chronic exposure over time. Chronic exposure now is where the detection of this exposure is harder and the effects are greater. Symptoms of exposure to carbon monoxide often imitate common illnesses like the flu. They get worse as exposure continues, and they can progress to confusion, concentration difficulties, and problems with coordination. So you're kind of losing your balance and you get confused and you're stumbling about. Many victims don't recognize that they're being poisoned. This delay can be dangerous because it allows the poisoning to continue to progress to more severe stages while victims assume they have a simple illness. Severe exposure can cause unconsciousness, seizures, and coma, and requires immediate emergency treatment. Remember, we need oxygen to survive. We need oxygen to fuel the chemical reactions that are taking place in our body. And the chemical reactions that take place in our body to govern life are many. Oxygen is transported through your red blood cell through that very hemoglobin that I spoke about in my video when I talked about leptospirosis symptoms. Hemoglobin is made to carry the oxygen. Now, carbon monoxide binds to hemoglobin 200 times quicker than oxygen, and it produces carboxyhemoglobin. So you are not getting that oxygen, that vital gas, to your systems, your tissues, your organs, to be able for you to sustain the chemical reactions in your body. If you're not sustaining your chemical reactions, then you are slowly or rapidly or acutely dying. Carbon monoxide affects every system in the body, although some organs take more damage than others. The brain, for example, needs a constant supply of oxygen, and that makes it particularly vulnerable to the effects of carbon monoxide. Remember, I talked about the affinity of carbon monoxide for hemoglobin, and if carbon monoxide is in your blood, then oxygen is not. So the brain that needs a supply, a sustained supply of oxygen, if it's not getting any, if it's starved, then we're going to have serious effects of this carbon monoxide poisoning. Another organ is your heart. The heart is a vital organ because it pumps all the blood. It pumps out oxygenated blood that comes from the lungs. If you've suffered carbon monoxide poisoning, this blood that your heart is pumping out into your system will not contain oxygen but carbon monoxide. But the heart itself can develop problems quickly during carbon monoxide exposure. When the heart has difficulty working as it normally does because of a lack of oxygen, it can trigger chest pain, irregular heartbeats, and heart attacks. You know how Jamaicans fear the heart attack? Well, generator use can lead to heart attacks if it's not properly used, if it's not properly serviced, if it's not properly placed, if there is limited ventilation in the home, because carbon monoxide is a natural, unavoidable byproduct of the combustion of the fuel that we are using to generate electricity. So people, a generator is not a fad, it is not a status symbol, it is used to give light to fuel our activities. So if you're gonna take up a generator, know the facts. Know how you're securing it, know where you're placing it. Make sure that your house or wherever you're using it is ventilated, that you don't ever have the generator inside a house. We also have long-term effects of carbon monoxide poisoning. These can be devastating in victims' lives, and these can be permanent. So even if you live after being poisoned by carbon monoxide, the effects can be so life-lasting and deleterious that your life can be upended, turned upside down. And this is where now we talk about the neurological conditions. So brain, neurons, brain of the brain persists long after initial exposure to carbon monoxide ends. So what are some of the challenges that we can end up with? Memory loss, concentration difficulties, personality changes, and coordination problems often develop. So it's almost like you're having a movement disorder or premature Alzheimer's or dementia. Folks, we really can't afford to be poisoned by carbon monoxide. It's as serious as a heart attack. If the brain is damaged from carbon monoxide, it often becomes permanent. The areas that are responsible for memory, learning, and your executive function, so your higher level functions, your thought, your reasoning, your decision making, those areas may never fully recover. People, you hear how many things I'm telling you about from carbon monoxide poisoning itself from this generator, that if we don't use it properly, what can happen? Carbon monoxide poisoning creates lasting psychological trauma beyond the physical effects. Many victims develop anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Remember, I tell you that we are whole beings, or physical, or mental, or emotional, or spiritual, or psychological, are all linked. Changes in your brain and your brain functions can affect personality and the person's ability to regulate their own emotions. Increased irritability and mood swings and other changes can make it impossible to even work. If you can't work after hurricane to rebuild, and then you're not going to be able to function. That's a challenge. Take heed to what I'm saying. Many will need extensive and expensive medical care and ongoing support. Carbon monoxide poisoning often mimics flu-like symptoms and can lead to unconsciousness and even fatalities. Symptoms include headache, nausea, dizziness, vomiting, cough or choking, sleepiness and confusion, shortness of breath, and syncope, which is fainting spells. You can have throat or eye irritation, chest pain, weakness, and then there's what we call severe toxicity, where you have seizures, loss of consciousness, and even coma. People, it's serious. I can use all the words and all the medical statements in the world to describe for you the deleterious effects of carbon monoxide poisoning. Just know, bad. So it's important for you to follow some simple steps to ensure that you're maintaining safety as you're using generators, as you wait for the JPS work to be done so that you can have electricity. If perchance you realize that you've been exposed to carbon monoxide and you're conscious, then try to get outside, get some fresh air by moving outdoors. Do not re-enter the area until it is confirmed safe by a trained person. So what are some rules for the safe use of generators? One is the placement of the generators. Only use generators outdoors in a well-ventilated area, at least 20 feet away from your home, windows, or any other building. Direct the engine exhaust away from all doors, windows, and vents to prevent fumes from entering living spaces. Avoid certain location types, so you don't ever want to use a generator in a house, in a garage, in a basement, in a crawl space, in a shed, or on a porch. Don't put it on your veranda, even if doors and windows are open, because this doesn't provide enough ventilation to prevent the buildup of lethal carbon monoxide levels. If you have the structure and the conditions for it, then you might need to think about installing carbon monoxide alarms, especially where there's going to be prolonged use of the generators. These are basic little tools. They sell them on Amazon. They're battery operated and you can install them in your homes. Make sure that they're working. They sound an alarm when carbon monoxide is detected. If you're purchasing a new generator, look for models with a built-in carbon monoxide shut-off safety feature and or reduced emissions. You want to regularly check and maintain your generator according to the owner's manual. Turn the generator off and let it cool completely before refueling it to avoid fire hazards, and store fuel in approved safety cans outside of living areas. Remember now, carbon monoxide poisoning is as serious as a heart attack. We want to stay safe. We want to ensure that nobody else is harmed from carbon monoxide poisoning. Please, it's important for this information to get into the hands of as many people as possible. We want to make sure that people are taken care of because we are our brother's keepers. Remember, a merry heart doeth good like a medicine, and a broken spirit dries the bones. If each one takes care of the person in front of and beside him, everyone will be taken care of. I'm Dr. Tamara, your online epidemiologist. Take care now.